Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Desai Shan from Cardiff University. It's my great honor and privilege to present at this very special event. I would like to thank Catherine Liepel for inviting me to Canada to give some presentation about my findings in my PhD project. Today, my topic is about workplace death at sea, Chinese surviving families' experiences of compensation claims. Workplace fatalities are still serious problems today, and according to the ILO's estimation and statistics, more than 2.3 million workers died as a result of occupational disease or workplace accidents. In China, in 2012, about 72,000 workplace fatalities were reported. However, this amount was criticized to be an underestimate because there are many industries are not covered by the statistics, for example, seafarers. The impacts of workplace fatalities on surviving families are tremendous and also can be disastrous. However, the current studies are quite limited regarding this aspect. Within the limited studies, it has been shown that health problems are a common problem reported, such as drug use, depression, alcohol use, and sometimes cancer. The social consequence is more obvious because usually once the breadwinner died in the family, the partner's social rule would change tremendously. And the third thing is about the financial consequence. The death of the worker will cause both immediate and long-term financial crisis for the family. That has been proven in the studies in Australia. However, in the current legislation and the legal system, the burden, the cost, the loss occur to surviving families are not well recognized because usually only the compensation system designed on the basis of the earning loss of the died worker rather than to considering the different needs, social, psychological, and financial development needs of the surviving families. Thirdly, the adequacy of organizational and institutional responses are not well examined in the current literature. So this field still needs more attention. Now let's have a look at the seafaring jobs. Navigation has traditionally recognized as a hazardous and adventurous occupation. According to the UK study, a historical UK study, the merchant navy workplace fatality rate is 26 times higher than other land-based industry. The Danish study shows that in the Danish merchant navy, the fatality rate is 11 times higher. However, both in the UK and in China, the merchant navy workplace fatalities are not included into general occupational health and safety statistics. And about Chinese seafarers, have two obvious characteristics in my research. On one hand, they are international workers. They are very active in global labor market. They serve not only Chinese vessels, but also the foreign vessels. By the end of 2013, China has almost 420,000 international seafarers. And in the year of 2013, about 120,000 duties has been finished on foreign vessels. So China is one of the largest labor supply country in global labor market. I would refer to my colleague Shamanta's presentation early in this morning. Basically, according to his map of the labor supply, China is a major contributor in the maritime labor market. However, on the other hand, these seafarers are precarious temporary workers. According to the domestic studies on Chinese seafarers, about 46% seafarers do not have any long-term employment relationships. Mainly, the employment relationships is established by voyage rather than natural year term. And about 59% seafarers are not covered by work-related injury insurance schemes. So in terms of Chinese seafarers, they are not well protected by the domestic workers' compensation system. Here is a picture illustrating the labor supply chain of the seafarers. From this, we can find it's a very indirect and fragmented recruitment relationship. If we have a closer look at the constitution of seafarers, we can divide it into officers and ratings. Officers, we would use the equivalent term as white-collar workers, but ratings would more equivalent to the blue-collar workers. So we can find the recruitment approach for the skilled officers and engineers are comparatively straightforward, but still need the crew agencies to be a middleman for them. This is both caused by the commercial practice of shipping industry and the Chinese legislation. Usually the overseas ship owner would like to recruit cheap labor from developing countries, and they cannot do this by themselves. They need to achieve this through local agencies. At the same time, the Chinese government would like to develop the crew agency, the labor supply industry. So there is a compulsory regulation that all the overseas ship owners cannot recruit seafarers from China directly, must through a crew agency in China. So try to protect the economic interest of Chinese crew agencies. So from this scenario, we can find the officers sometimes can be covered by work-related injury insurance, and then when they are dispatched on the foreign vessel, they can be indirectly protected by the P&I Club, which is the ship owner's liability insurers. However, for the ratings, we can find their rules are different. Usually they have a gun master or a grassroots crew agencies, not a licensed formal crew agencies. So the formal crew agencies have a need for rating, then they will inform a grassroots crew agency, say they have this need. And in this approach, the ratings do not have any formal employment relationship, either with crew agencies without license or with license. So in that sense, those two crew agencies just argue they introduce a job for the rating rather than to formulate a formal employment relationships. So in that sense, we can find they are not protected by the work-related injury insurance. So that is a major problem, referring to Manqui's presentation earlier. The work-related injury insurance coverage is very limited in China. So turning to my research question is whether the laws and needs of Chinese surviving families can be covered and met by the organizations of ship owners, administrative and judicial institutions. I use in-depth interviews. I contacted about 12 surviving families, and by the end, 8 families agreed to accept my interview. And then I conducted the interviews with ship owners' representatives, especially their liability insurers representative, the claim handlers, crew agency managers, maritime judges, and maritime lawyers. Here we move to some findings. The first group of findings is organization-related issues. The management workflow of workplace fatalities are very fragmented. The liabilities of involving parties are not properly defined. And at the same time, this management chain is not transparent. Here is a brief picture of the organizational workflow of accident and claims. We can find once the work fatalities happen, it's the ship owner's duties to transport the remains back to China. However, in some ship owners' company policies, they have a organization rule to force the seafarer and their families to give up their consent, to give up the right to transport the remains back to China. So usually there is a policy that without families' consent, the ship owners can conduct overseas cremations. The only liability for ship owner is to transport the ash back. And once the ash transported or the remains transported, then it would be a crew agency's responsibilities to contact the surviving families. And once the funeral is on the way or finished, the ship owners may send a claim handler to negotiate with the surviving family, would offer them a compensation. So in this case, sometimes the transport of remains or ashes can be a bargaining tool. So the ship owner or the crew agency say, if your surviving family, you do not take the offer, we wouldn't transport the remains for you. So that become a kind of very nasty scenario in this situation. And we also can find from this the direction of the arrow is only one way. So it totally up to the ship owner whether to contact the seafarers' families or not. The surviving families cannot track and trace the ship owners if they have the need. So they're extremely passive in this management flow. So this fragmented management chain enabling ship owners to a large extent to avoid facing the pressures from surviving families, and also enabling crew agencies to shrink their responsibilities because they said they have no duty of care for seafarers because seafarers didn't work in their workplaces but work overseas. So that constitute a black box. So the crew agencies and the ship owners can negotiate and try to maintain both of their interests, but ignore the seafarers' interests in this situation. Here are some seafarers, surviving families' voices. In the first quote is a daughter of a killed seafarer in a pirate attack in West Africa. And she said the ship owner never sent a representative and never paid any attention to her and her family. Her feeling is that for the company, her father's loss, a captain's loss for the company is just a loss of a tool. So who would care about the loss of a tool? Who would provide humanitarian or care for the tool's family? And the second is about a ship sinking accident. Almost all the crew died on that bulk carrier. In that case, the 20 family members got together in the crew agency office. Their simple request is just ask the crew agency to disclose the information, the address, the name of the ship owner. But the crew agency refused to do so. The family wanted to meet the ship owner, but the crew agency told them the ship owner has millions of other things to do, and this is not their priority. So as a result, these family members smash the office, and under that pressure, the crew agency disclosed the liability insurance information, and the negotiation can be proceeded in that case. The second problem in the ship owners organization is the surviving families cannot access accident investigation results. In addition to workplace death, workplace disappearance is another major problem in the shipping industry. And in that sense, in that case, in the first code is a seafarer's brother. The seafarer disappear on board, but no investigation result has been disclosed to the family. And the family wanted to conduct an investigation on board to try to meet the seafarers' colleagues to know what exactly happened at that time on board. But the crew agency told them the ship owner replaced all the crew in Hong Kong. So when the ship called any Chinese port, the crew already been replaced. So there is no possibility for the family to access the result of the investigation. And another issue is about body search, because if the maritime casualty occur on high sea, it would be very difficult to continue the body search. Families usually insisted to find the bodies because that is a natural human need. Without the body, you can never know a person is dead or still alive. However, when they read this request, the company usually told them, if you insist this request, all the searching cost would be deducted from your final compensation. So it's impossible for the families to emphasize their request in this situation. But just got some technical problem. There we go. Okay, next one. Okay, thanks. Okay, now we have a look at the institution, the public institution attitudes towards surviving families. Different from Manqui's presentation, seafarers as the foreign-related workers usually are not foreign to the jurisdiction of general workers' compensation. So the administrative attitudes towards regulating seafarers are very negative. And then the only alternative way is to go to the maritime court to sue the ship owners, which is notoriously financially expensive and time-consuming. Also legally complicated, because maritime law is a very specialized area and needs very complicated knowledge about that. Totally different from other labor lawyers' practice. So the first code indicates that the family tried to find help, trying to seek help through police station, through Ministry of Transport, through Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But at the end, no administrative authority would like to intervene their case. And it's a very desperate and helpless situation for the family. The second one is when they try to think about to sue the ship owner, but the lawyer told them it almost cannot significantly improve their situation, because at that time there is a liability limit for the ship owner. All the compensation cannot exceed 800,000 yuan, but this has been abolished in 2013. So we have some progress in this area. The final finding is about the family-related issues. Seafaring, maritime industry is a very male-dominated industry, but there are still some gender issue in this research emerged. Usually, the mainly problem for the family is they do not have enough knowledge, either about the deceased seafarers' contracts and the law and regulations. That is mainly because the contract containing compensation standards just between crew agencies and ship owners. In the seafarers' labor contract, in their employment contract, this information is not included. So that created a huge difficulty for seafarer families to raise a compensation amount to negotiate. The second issue is about the complex legal rules, because seafarers' legal compensation actually is not consistent with general workers' situation. So that also that makes it very difficult for families to access the right legal sources. So as a widow commented, she said, the so-called legal rules are very complex. She wanted to raise work-related injury damage first, but the crew agency said, you cannot claim workers' compensation from me, and you should claim that to the Hong Kong Ship Management Company. And then she contacted the Hong Kong Ship Management Company. The Hong Kong Ship Management Company said, you should go to United States to claim your workers' compensation, because the ship owner is in the United States. So that makes the situation very difficult. About gender issue, and widows, legally speaking, are the first got the priority to inherit the death compensation. But Chinese culture, if the widow remarry, then their family status would be denied by their husband's family. So in that case, in this case, the sister-in-law incited the mother-in-law to rob all the compensation from the widow. The widow got a daughter, so the widow, the resistant widow can do is to kneel down in front of her mother-in-law to say, just have some mercy on her and her daughter. But in some rural areas, usually the widow are excluded from negotiation. The relatives-in-law would basically keep all the compensation and keep it as a secret to the widow. So also force the widow to remarry and quit the claim of compensation. So to sum up, we can find the current Chinese business management of workplace accidents enable the ship owners to be unapproachable for the surviving families. Second, we can find the surviving families have very limited information and support, not only from companies, from organizations and institutions. Thirdly, the internal conflicts and the discrimination against widows actually threaten the solidarity of the families. So that's all about my presentation today. Thank you very much.